Thanks for joining us on CBN News Today. I'm Charlene Aaron. As the world watches the ISIS army carry out atrocities in Iraq, many are concerned about the growing threat here at home. At least 100 Americans are believed to be fighting with ISIS, and some of those fighters will return one day. All this as there are new concerns about the Department of Homeland Security's ability to track potential threats in the U.S. Dale Hurd reports.
Authorities believe as many as 6,000 foreign nationals who arrived in the U.S. on student visas have vanished. They were taking advantage of a program that includes Harvard, Yale, and other major institutions.
They just disappear.
It's how one of the 9/11 hijackers got into the country before flying a jet into the Pentagon. And an ABC News investigation found that the visa loophole still has not been fixed.
It's been pointed out over and over and over again. And the fact that nobody's done anything about it yet, that's a very dangerous thing for all of us.
This at a time when the Saudi king has warned that Islamic State terrorists are likely to attack Europe and the U.S. before the end of the year, if there is not a strong international response soon. Today, Britain's Prime Minister unveiled a new package of legislation aimed at preventing attacks in the United Kingdom by Muslim terrorists returning from the Middle East.
We have already taken a wide range of measures, including stopping suspects from travelling to the region by seizing passports, barring foreign nationals from re-entering the United Kingdom.
Prime Minister Cameron has a plan. President Obama has taken heat from both Republicans and Democrats for admitting he doesn't have a strategy yet for dealing with the growing threat posed by the Islamic State, and for claiming the U.S. is in less danger than it was 20 or 30 years ago, even though an image of the Islamic State flag was shown in front of the White House and then posted on Twitter. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Republicans and Democrats say President Obama's slow approach to ISIS could put the country at risk. On NBC's Meet the Press, Dianne Feinstein, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, said she knows the president is very cautious, but in this case, he may be too cautious. Republicans are taking a much stronger tone.
I think it starts with an understanding that this is a direct threat to the United States of America, that it may be one of the biggest we have ever faced. I was astounded when the President of the United States said that the world has always been messy and it's been accentuated by social media. That means that the President of the United States is either in denial or overwhelmed.
Well, unfortunately, we find it consistent with his past policy and actions on foreign policy. And it shows, I think exemplifies, that his foreign policy is an absolute freefall.
Representative Rogers also criticized the president's foreign policy in dealing with Russia, Iran, and North Korea. He said America's allies no longer trust us to lead the world through difficult times. All this as tens of thousands of refugees in Erbil, Iraq, are without water and sanitation, desperate for help and hope. Gary Lane tells us what CBN is doing to help.
British and Australian humanitarian airdrops provided much-needed food and water relief to the besieged Iraqi city Amerli. And here, 100 miles away from the city of Amerli, in the Kurdish capital city of Erbil, tens of thousands of refugees are still in need. Sure, they don't have the needs of the people of Amerli. They have shelter, they have plenty of food, but their challenges are great. Most refugees here and elsewhere in Kurdistan need better sanitation and health care. In northern Iraq, few toilets are available in makeshift camps. So some people are forced to relieve themselves wherever possible. With few trash bags or refuse containers around, garbage is tossed everywhere. The people also lack clean water. We've already shown you how CBN doubled the number of water containers for 4,000 refugees living in these unfinished buildings in Zakho. And when we learned that some refugee children residing in this church were getting sick, we provided a water filter system to bring them clean water.
One of the necessities to have a filter water for a place like this, because I think they are drinking the water directly from the tanks. Bad water dirty water can cause diarrhea a lot, especially for children, and this is what they are facing.
CBN Disaster Relief has also partnered with Iraqi Christians to bring free medicine and other medical supplies to the refugees. And because they've lost their homes and possessions, some refugees say they're ready to give up. This pharmacist says Christian medical workers are bringing them health care and hope.
We have to deal with them, with their soul, with their needing, with their they are crying. We have to be support them in this. We were encouraging him. The war doesn't end here, because Jesus Christ has a plan for you. He loves you.
And that was the message delivered to more than 100 children attending a Superbook party and showing at an Erbil refugee camp. First, the children enjoyed some face painting and games, a few snacks before the show, and then it was time for Gizmo, Joy, and Chris, CBN's Superbook. One episode taught them about the creation and fall of man, another about David's courage and trust in God to defeat Goliath. A Superbook team volunteer told us the showing was timely because the children are desperate for a little happiness and hope.
Now the Christian children is not happy. He sees all the time the sad.
But on this early September evening, they forgot the terror that forced them from their homes. They clapped, laughed, and were reminded of God's love.
It's so good, and this film, it's so nice watching it to film. Yes, we are happy, and Jesus is with the children all the time.
And like David, these young Iraqi refugees are learning to rely on God to help them overcome the giants in their lives. Gary Lane, CBN News, Erbil, Iraq.
The U.S. military attacked the Islamic extremist group al-Shabaab in Somalia yesterday. A senior Somali intelligence official says a drone targeted terrorist leader Ahmed Abdi Godani. It's not clear if Godani was killed in the strike. The Pentagon says it's assessing the results and will provide an update when appropriate. Al-Shabaab is mostly active in Somalia's rural regions, but it has carried out attacks in neighboring Kenya. President Obama heads to Europe today. He's stopping in Estonia to show support for NATO allies in the Baltic region who are concerned over Russia's aggressive moves against Ukraine. It's believed at least 1,000 Russian soldiers are fighting with rebels inside Ukraine, causing Ukrainian leaders to put pressure on NATO and the U.S. for a stronger response. Though the president expressed support for diplomatic instead of military action, others are pushing to provide arms. The U.S. chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations says he supports supplying weapons to the Ukrainian government.
If you are being invaded by Russia, you have to be able to defend yourself.
The president will attend a NATO summit in Wales later this week. Leaders are expected to provide a 4,000-troop force to respond to any Russian actions against NATO allies. Here at home, a new government report says the federal debt will keep growing rapidly in the years ahead. The Congressional Budget Office projects the government will keep running deficits over the next decade, adding more than $7 trillion to the national debt. That would bring the debt to nearly $25 trillion. Spending on health care and retirement programs will drive up government spending, and that adds up to higher taxes in the years ahead. Well, federal regulations are becoming so burdensome, they're weighing down the American economy, but they're also costing you more money than you spend on food and clothing. Paul Strand has more.
You are not worthy to receive these 10 commandments.
When God sent Moses down from the mountaintop, it was with just 10 commandments. But the federal government obviously thinks we need a lot more, leading Wayne Cruz to call his latest report on their proliferating 10,000 commandments.
So I picked 10,000 commandments, but now, of course, we've got a lot more than 10,000 commandments because we've had 88,000 regulations just in the past decade.
Cruz documents all this from his position at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. He says there are more federal regulations on the books than most humans could ever read.
The Federal Register this past year was 79,000 pages. Imagine that, 79,000 pages of rules.
The costs are real and substantial. Cruz says just look at how Obamacare's dictates are already affecting businesses.
It's been all over the news about Obamacare and how companies are either downsizing, job formation rates are much lower, companies are putting their employees on part-time basis rather than full-time. So regulation is a heavy load.
Cruz figures federal regulations cost the economy a whopping $1.9 trillion a year, an eighth of the country's GDP. But let's make it personal. It costs your household almost $15,000 a year.
And if you think about the average family income of about $65,000 in that neighborhood, it's around 23%. It's the biggest item in the family budget, if you think of it that way, except for housing. It's bigger than entertainment, food, everything else.
Don't blame Congress. They're too gridlocked to do much regulating. It's the federal agencies spewing them out, some 3,600 regulations in an average year.
Last year, there were 51 regulations for every law passed by Congress.
And Cruz says the very most expensive kind, what are called economically significant rules, are growing especially fast, 191 last year.
That doesn't mean a little bit of money or it just might bother you a little bit. An economically significant regulation is one that officially is designated to cost $100 million a year.
Many are saying it's time to question whether the benefits of rules and regulations are worth the lost jobs, lost growth, and nearly $2 trillion they shave off the American economy every year. But Cruz warns, as the nanny state grows ever bigger and takes more and more control of Americans' lives, the biggest cost to them may be in things not so easily measured.
And one thing that we never measure is loss of liberty. What is the cost of losing our liberties?
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
The Obama administration says the release of 3 Americans being held in North Korea is a top priority. On Monday, Jeffrey Foley, Matthew Miller, and Kenneth Bae made statements to foreign media. Bae, a missionary serving a 15-year sentence, says his health has deteriorated at a labor camp where he works 8 hours a day. His family is concerned about his survival. Bae's sister said it's clear that her 46-year-old brother is in a lot of pain. Bae and his fellow prisoners say they believe their only hope for release is for a U.S. official to make a direct appeal to the North Korean government. Authorities in Indiana are investigating Islamic graffiti that was spray painted on 3 churches over the weekend. Police say the vandals defaced the churches in Columbus with messages like infidels and Quran 3:151, a verse that threatens to cast terror into the hearts of non-Muslims and condemn them to fire. It's not clear if the vandals were radical Muslims or pranksters trying to incite hatred against Muslims. Members of the Islamic Society of Columbus condemned the graffiti and offered to clean it up. Coming up, from alcohol and thoughts of suicide to a relationship with Jesus, a rock and roll jukebox hero turns his life around. His story is next. Welcome back to CBN News Today. Remember the rock band Creed from the late 90s? Lead singer Scott Stapp was known for his deep voice. The fast track to fame and fortune took him down a dark road, but somewhere along the way, God got a hold of his heart. And recently, CBN's Tracy Winborn caught up with him on tour, and he told her how his faith in God has changed his life.
Creed is one of the most successful rock bands of all time, selling 30 million albums worldwide. Grammy and Dove Award-winning artist Scott Stapp is out with a new solo album called Proof of Life, and it is proof that his life is in a much better place after it spiraled out of control.
With the success of Creed and with where I was in my heart as a Christian, I was running from the church in a spiritual vacuum. I chose to drink, and that led to many other things, drug use and just the life of the party.
Stapp said his addictions eventually started taking a toll on his body, and it even almost killed him.
God began to work on me, and then, continual consequence came because of my actions, losing all, faith in my abilities and in all my strengths. Just brought me to surrender where I had no other place to go but to death or to God.
Stapp did turn to God, and it saved his life. Now, he hopes the songs on his new Christian album will inspire others.
It's the message of grace and love and, the power of God's redemptive power in our lives and that he can take these messes that we make and this imperfect being that we are and create a message.
He hopes to share that message worldwide on his Proof of Life tour and take fans on a journey from his mega hits with Creed to the never-ending grace of a loving God.
I don't always do it right, but knowing the way makes it a lot easier to make the right choices and to stay on that path. So, you know, I'm going to continue to be imperfect for the rest of my life, but thank God that in knowing who Christ is, it has given me clear direction and a path that I want to follow.
And thanks to Tracy Winborn for that report. Tracy says Stapp told her he's thankful for the seed of truth that was planted in him when he was a child because he never forgot about God. An encouragement for all you parents out there. Up next, Sharia patrols are enforcing Islamic law on the streets of Britain. We'll take you for an inside look at the UK for a look at the rise of British jihadists and what's being done to bring them down. Earlier, we told you about the threat that British Muslims fighting in Syria and Iraq pose to the United Kingdom. Islam has been a growing force in Britain for years. Muslims have even taken over some parts of the country. Now a group of British citizens is fighting back. Dale Hurd has the story from London.
No one who has been paying attention to the growth of radical Islam in Britain should have been surprised that the terrorist who stood over murdered American journalist James Foley was reported to have a London accent. Over 1,000 British Muslims are now fighting for the Islamic State, and more are joining every day.
The key thing to realize about British fighters in Syria is that they're not there to take a backseat role. They are very much at the forefront of this conflict.
Britain is now a major exporter of terrorists, the result of multiculturalism. There have been warning signs for years. This was a Muslim protest in London CBN News brought to viewers more than 8 years ago. Today, Britain has functioning Sharia courts, and Sharia patrols enforce Islamic law on some of its streets.
Remove yourself away from the mosque. Go away from the mosque now. Muslim patrol.
This is a Muslim area. Are you not wanted around here?
Islamic halal food is everywhere, and Islam is today the fastest growing religion in the UK.
I actually gave up a modelling career for Islam, and that's the best choice I've made ever.
Even though Muslims are a relatively small minority in Britain, there is a feeling among some British that their nation is being handed over to Islam, that the government doesn't care about promoting traditional British values, Judeo-Christian values, either because it doesn't believe in them anymore or because it doesn't want to be labeled as intolerant. British civilization has been a gift to the world, but the British don't care so much about their own civilization anymore, and it's into this vacuum that Islam is advancing. Sure, the British still care about their queen and tradition, but radical Muslims have been allowed and even encouraged to build a parallel society within this officially Christian nation.
The reason we have capitulated in the West so much to Islam is self-hatred. There's an underlying self-hatred of our own societies, of our own cultures.
Anne-Marie Waters is a former leftist who runs Sharia Watch UK.
We've got this multiculturalism, this dangerous multiculturalism in Britain, which is killing women, killing girls, and the left not only doesn't say anything about it, but continues to push for it as a good, even though it knows, even though it can see that it's killing girls. We know for a fact that there are mosques in this country where little girls of 8, 9, 10 years of age are being married, quote-unquote married, to older men and being raped.
When British soldier Lee Rigby was decapitated in the streets of London, one of the first things Prime Minister David Cameron said was that the murder was not because of Islam. After the Foley decapitation, Cameron said it again. And to be sure, many British Muslims have condemned the murder.
As a Muslim, you know, I feel we shouldn't do it.
I think it's disgusting. I think that a lot of extremists have taken over and hijacked Islam.
We come back to this, it's only a tiny minority of extremists, it's got nothing to do with Islam, but the point is, this stuff is coming directly from the Quran, from the Hadith.
Muslim immigrant sex grooming gangs were covered up by the British police for 20 years. The British government's weak response to radical Islam has led to the formation of citizen groups and protest movements, like the English Defence League and Britain First. Britain First goes into the street to confront Sharia patrols and has horrified the British establishment for having the nerve to go into mosque to pass out Bibles to Muslims.
And there's a nice British Army Bible. Spread the word of Jesus Christ around Bradford. Okay. Amen.
Jesus Christ our Lord, we want to save you from hell. We reject the false prophet Muhammad and read the Bible.
The chairman of Britain First is Paul Golding.
This is a Christian country. Our heritage is Christian. We take it very seriously. We hold it dear. So giving out Christian Bibles in a Christian country on British streets to people who are British citizens, we don't see anything wrong with that. Have you looked around for any threats at all?
But when we were with Golding, he was dodging the police, who seemed to view him as a troublemaker. The British government is going to have to decide whether it cares more about being viewed as tolerant or about stopping terrorism, because the whole world is now paying the bill for Britain's experiment in multiculturalism.
And we have got to start dealing with this. We've got to say, look, we have freedom of speech. You can't beat up women. We won't stone people to death for their sex lives. You have to accept that, or you can't live here.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, London.
A Utah woman is miraculously recovering after drinking sweet tea laced with acid. 67-year-old Jan Harding says she knew something was wrong the moment she took a single sip of tea at Dickey's Barbecue near Salt Lake City. An employee at the restaurant accidentally poured the toxic chemical into the tea in place of sugar. The toxic tea caused deep ulcerated burns in Harding's esophagus, something that could have killed her. She and her family say their faith gave them hope that she would pull through.
Our faith is what kept us unified and kept us optimistic.
I could not have made it without the prayers of America. I've had people contact me from all over this nation that they thought it could have been them.
God has allowed something into our lives that is intended to make some very positive differences.
Police are looking into the matter to decide if any criminal charges will be filed in the case. And that's it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. We hope you join us next time. Have a great day and God bless.